Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
Hey guys, this is your co-host Ashley Lunar Goddess, Gorilla Girl filmmaker and horror-loving cinephile. I'm just your average pun-making swearwolf that loves to explore the spookier things in life.
I'm your co-host John Thomas, paranormal investigator, super smartass, and film lover extraordinaire.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and all of our paranormal pals? In today's episode, we'll be diving into the world of hauntings and paranormal investigations. Joining us is the host of Small Town Tales podcast and author, C.L. Thomas. Welcome, C.L.
Hi, guys. Thank you for having me on. I'm very honored.
Yeah, it's great to have you on.
Heck yeah.
So, for those that don't know, CL here is an awesome podcast host, as well as an author. And I think you've got an upcoming book, right? That's going to be released?
I do. It's kind of funny. It's taken me 2 years to write this book. It's taken a long time. Every time I tried to put it out, I'm having to step back and take it back and redo stuff and get new people to help me with it because something always ultimately happens when I'm trying to release this book. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I looked at your website and saw, I read the breakdown of what the book is, and it's like, yep, something out there does not want you to publish that book. But it seems like it's going to be a really awesome topic that there aren't a lot of books out there about. So,
Yes.
Would you mind sharing a little bit about what the subject is?
Yeah, of course. The book is called Dancing with Demons, and it's about a haunting that I experienced about 10 years ago. And ultimately, this case led me into going back into the paranormal. I was not interested in doing any kind of paranormal research or investigating, none of that. I was strictly in medical school, and that's what I was going to do, was be a doctor and be successful and the whole deal. Long story short, I lived in his house in Nashville, and it sat right on the front lines of the Battle of Nashville. It was very, very haunted, and it was a very negative haunting, and it had such an effect on me that it just spun my world upside down. I ended up getting physically ill, almost committed suicide in his house. Just a lot of stuff happened. I had a roommate at the time who was in a severe car wreck, and we both believe that it's all from this haunted of this house. And so that's basically what the book is about.
Yeah, and I think I saw on Amazon, because I follow all the links. I'm a very curious person. I saw on Amazon that you talked a lot, or you referenced that a really important piece of this is that nobody talks about in the paranormal investigation world how paranormal interactions can actually take a toll on mental health. Nobody talks about that.
Absolutely. Actually, the only one that kind of stresses that a little bit might be Zach Bagans. If you follow his work at all, like he put out The Demon House, and I guess he's got a book out in which he talks about how paranormal investigating and hauntings really took a toll on his life. So it's actually true. I think David Chowders is another one. If you guys know him, he's an investigator out of Mississippi. Now he lives in the Northeast, of course, but he and I have a very similar story to where we've experienced the paranormal in such a way that it's really taken a toll on us, both mentally and physically. And I think that a lot of the paranormal world doesn't really pay a lot of attention to that. In fact, like a lot of people, even demonologists out there, are saying, oh yeah, negative entities are so rare. But I think the way that we're looking for the negative entities, we look at Hollywood, right, where beds are spinning and you got kids coughing up nails and eating spiders and all that silly stuff, right? That's really not how it happens. They're going to play on like emotions and any kind of vice that you might have to slowly tear you down.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder too, because it's becoming such a hot topic in, podcasting, but also just in the regular world, more and more TV shows about paranormal encounters reference it. But oftentimes I feel like those that are willing to talk about it tend to be the ones that have generally neutral to positive experiences. And what I mean by that is like they see something or it's like out of the corner of their eyes, but it's usually not something having like a big impact on their fear.
Right.
Whereas we don't see a lot of people talking about interactions, at least from what I've watched, talking about their interactions where it did lead to true terror and anxiety breakdowns and panic breakdowns. But then you talk to people on personal levels because I think it is traumatic. People don't talk about it. But then when you do talk to people that have had those traumatic experiences that were paranormal, driven, you understand like that still has an effect on them. It's any like trauma is trauma no matter where it came from, whether it's paranormal or something that, one might consider natural trauma. Like it is something that's going to carry with the person. And if they keep experiencing that, so like you said, living in a house, you can't get away from that really.
Right.
You're going to keep experiencing that. That's going to build up that trauma and create a lot of long lasting, in my opinion, mental impacts, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Absolutely, though, to what you're saying. I think a big part of what happened to me, though, is it kind of drew me in. So I started having all these experiences in the house. My roommate was too, and we were seeing shadows. We heard stuff was being moved around the house, just all kinds of different stuff. And it really piqued my interest. And there was only 2 shows at the time that was on. It was like Ghost Hunters, and it was like a Friday night thing. Ghost Hunters, I think Ghost Adventures had their first season out, and then it was like a British show, and I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, I know they had like Ghost Hunters International at the same time, probably. No, that was later.
No, this was a
I know the
blonde-haired...
British show that you're thinking of. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the name of it, though.
Yeah, there was like a medium, and it was an interesting show.
Yes.
I was drawn to it because of the stuff in the house, and it just sucked me right in to the point where I started doing EVP sessions in the house, and my whole mindset became all about the paranormal. It was like almost an obsession. And what it was doing was just drawing me in to where I was almost feeding it. With more attention I would give to it, the more stronger that haunting got.
Yeah, I don't remember who said it, but there was someone we talked to that said, like, if something's trying to get your attention and you ignore it, it kind of is muted and isn't as loud and big. But once you say, okay, I see you, then it's like, here I am. And it's a big,
Right.
big revelation. And so that sounds like that's what you encountered. Have you always experienced some level of paranormal activity, or
Yes.
around when did you first kind of remember experiencing?
My first memory is actually a paranormal experience. So I've been seeing ghosts since I was like 2 years old. Some of my earliest memories are of it was a male figure that would stand in my room when I was in my crib. I would see like balls of light bouncing around the room. Just different things would happen when I was really, really small. Other things that happened too, when I got a little older, I saw my grandma who had passed away. I knew that she had passed even before my parents did. I ran downstairs and told them that, hey, Grandma said that she's in a better place. She's with Grandpa or something to that nature. And they had no idea what I was talking about. And I think 10 minutes later, the phone rang with my aunt telling them the news. So it was just stuff like that that would go on when I was a kid.
So for you, it sounds like that's like you've got the gift of sight because you can actually see them.
Before we get too far, was it Most Haunted, the name of the TV show?
It sure was, yes.
Yep. I had to
He was
look
looking
it
it
up.
up. He was like, I gotta ask the Google. It's gonna drive him nuts.
Yes.
Yeah, with Derek and I don't know the lady's name. I just remember the medium on there, Derek.
Yeah, Derek and Yvette Fielding.
Yes.
No, she was there. Yeah, that's it. Yep.
I remember that show.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would go into these really cool places, and it was a neat show, I guess. It was entertaining.
So has your relationship with the paranormal, your abilities, has it remained the same? Like, are you still able to see presences, or has it shifted, ebbed and flowed as you've gone through life?
It kind of ebbed and flowed, and I think it's based on if I'm paying attention or not. So as a kid, it was always there. As I got older, of course, people start to ridicule you and all that kind of stuff. High school, I started playing sports and was preoccupied. I was running track and all that good stuff. And then college hit, and I just wanted to make the grades and go run track, right? So,
You're like, I'm not
yeah,
listening to you,
I wasn't
ghosts.
listening then. It was always there in the back of my mind, of course. I don't know. For when I was in college, there was a train tunnel. I went to IUP in Pennsylvania for undergrad, and there's an old train tunnel that runs down there. I think it's like a 2-mile tunnel, and it's reportedly really haunted. So one night we all went up there, of course, with flashlights and.
Of course.
Of course. But it wasn't like a serious investigation or anything. But yeah, it was always there. Just wasn't paying attention as much.
And did you experience anything when you went to the tunnels?
I did, actually. I did.
Now, because you went with a group, did they, by proxy, experience stuff with you as well?
They did. Of course, there might have been a little bit of alcohol involved and other things. We had a good time, but, they were scared. I felt a male figure while I was in there. And, I didn't really make too much of a big deal about it, but we ended up leaving.
Yeah, I think most of us have been there where, like, you hear something haunted in your town and it's like, let's all go. And of course it has to be at night, right? Like when no adults are around, it's just like, we're going to go. There's that one in Colorado. There's some, I don't even know, they've built over it now, but there was like a swamp and you had to go through some underbrush and trees and stuff to get there, like basically crawl in. And teens used to party there. Like that was the party spot. Like you're choosing a haunted spot to party, but this is what horror movies are made out of.
That's very true.
They were so mad when that got built over because the residents in the area were like annoyed that all these kids would come park and party in there and they could hear them at night. But by the time, cops would get called and like the cops crawl in there, like they're all gone because they know this place so well. So it got built over. The youth were not pleased.
But even, what is the name of that hospital up in Kentucky? I know that asylum that's up there.
Waverly Hills?
Waverly Hills.
I love that place.
If you go in there, that's all graffitied and everything. So somebody was partying in there
Yeah.
back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like a lot of haunted places that are accessible by people end up being graffitied because I think without realizing it, people are drawn to those places. Like the same reason spirits are, people are, whatever is drawing them in. And whereas spirits are like, let me just be, people are in their party. So was the house in Tennessee the first time you started doing paranormal investigations, or had you done investigations prior?
It was probably when the house was haunted. I started going on investigations, and gosh, I went everywhere. I stayed the night at Bell Witch Cave. I went to St. Augustine. I was in New Orleans all over the place because I traveled a lot for my job at the time, and I was able to do that. I just went all over. So if there was a haunted place, I would go.
I love that. You're like, John, you were so brave. I'm such a little wuss about stuff that it's like, that's haunted. Do you know how long it took me to decide I was going to go up to that Bethany's Home Sweet Haunted Home? And I almost talked myself out of it that week because I'm just like, what if something attaches to me and then I bring it home with me and now I've got extra, like, oh my gosh. And oh my goodness, I am a whole mess when it comes to that
Yeah,
stuff.
she tried so hard to talk herself out of it. I'm like, no, Ashley, go. Have fun. It's going to be with a group of people. Go. Try it. I'm not there, but go.
Did you stay the night there?
No.
I
did not.
Do you live over there?
So I am probably about an hour and a half, 2 hours away from there.
Got it.
I'm closer to the East Bay area versus I don't even know, northwest. But I'm trying in my head to, like, I'm pointing like you guys see the map in my head. It's definitely, I'm baby stepping myself in. But that's because it goes back to your earlier point. Everything I've ever experienced, because I've been a lifelong encountering things I can't explain person, everything I've ever experienced has never been positive. It's never been like small interactions of, oh, I see a spirit. It's all nice. Like it's stuff that, yes, probably is fear driven in terms of I'm probably perceiving it more intensely than it is. But to me, the energy imprints on them have never been positive. They've always been pretty alarming. And so, and not alarming because they're there, but just the energy vibration.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you don't feel good.
It's the lower vibrations that are in there. Yeah.
Yeah, and so for me, that's a lot of what I have been exposed to. Here, the house I'm in right now, we've talked about, there's the spirit here that my husband acknowledges, which is funny because he never admits that stuff is real. But here he's like, yeah, I know, I feel it. That one, I think, is the first one I've ever been where I'm just like, oh, you're cool. So this is what a typical, like, not typical, but this is what like a pretty regular spirit feels like. Awesome. You can hang here, homie. That's great.
This is the house that you smelled marshmallows in, right? While you were editing or whatever?
Cigars.
No,
The
you said
marshmallows was
marshmallows.
upstairs.
Okay, yeah. So it's still the same house, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, and there's been twice that I've smelled strong marshmallows, not two occasions, but two homes, in correlation with like activity. I don't know what that means. Someone tried to explain it to us that like you can have just like you can feel and see and hear, you can also smell certain things,
can.
and it's a spirit. So I still don't quite understand the significance of the marshmallows.
Maybe maybe the spirit just liked marshmallows.
That's awesome. I do too. I'm not mad at that. Like if I could pick a smell when I go, I'm gonna pick something like cotton candy or I don't know, like baking cinnamon rolls. That's what it make everybody hungry everywhere I go.
S'mores makes me want to have a s'more right now.
Yes. That's exactly when he mentioned the marshmallows. I'm like, ooh, I want a s'more. That's my automatic association. So yeah, that's I was a little nervous about going to Bethany's Home Sweet Haunted Home because I was concerned about that. But you have gone on some pretty awesome trips because I saw your adventures through social media and these really amazing places, and you take awesome photographs of these places. And for me, I'm drawn to all of the ruins and the old architecture and the stuff like that. So for me, it's like I'm drawn to things that are probably likely going to be haunted. So I just have to come to terms with, get used to it, baby.
But you don't have to be afraid of it. That's kind of the thing. It's kind of like when you asked me earlier, when you go through some kind of trauma, you're less likely to be to overreact, I guess, to different situations. Like I'm a cancer survivor, for instance. So when I'm met with like health issues or anything like that, it's not as big a deal anymore because I can compare it to that time I had stage 2 cancer, right? So I think you kind of learn how to deal with different hauntings and the spirit world. The more I learn about the spirit world, the more, you're just not afraid of it anymore. You know how to deal with it. You know what to expect in a lot of situations, and you know how to protect yourself. Like I work with Archangel Michael a lot in order to protect me from really, really negative spirits. But it's just that the more you learn, the more you figure stuff out in the spirit world.
So how did you learn about all of that stuff? Because I know you said you started paranormal investigations when there were only 2 paranormal shows out there. So there probably wasn't a lot of
There
information out there
wasn't,
about that.
no, but there was a lot of books. There's a lot of books because this stuff's been going on for, 100 years now? There's a lot of literature out there, particularly from the 70s and 60s, about meditation and spiritualism. There's a bunch of Wicca books that are really good on the subject. So it's out there. You got to dig, of course, but it's there.
It sounds like also being open to researching different areas. So it's not just one area, like Wicca, meditation, protection. How in the world do you work with the Archangel Michael? Because that sounds amazing. But like, how do you do that, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, so I'm very spiritual. what my upbringing is, my mother was Jewish and my dad is Catholic. So I really drew from the Catholic side. I'm a really big believer in a higher power and angels. And so I really rely on prayer and meditation. And I work with different entities related to that. And I know in the Wiccan world, it's the same thing, but they believe in higher power too, but maybe not so much, God and angels like that, but they work with different entities. Maybe it's spirit guides, just whatever your beliefs are. You can call on those entities and work with them. And the more you meditate and know who your spirit guides are, whether it's an angel or another spirit, the more comfortable you become in dealing with the spirit world. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. How did you know through your meditation and your prayers, how did you know it was Michael, for example, that you were
That's a really good question.
connecting with?
So 2 years ago, it's a funny story. 2 years ago, I used to talk to a guy, I won't say his name, but he's a pretty famous medium, and he works with Archangel Michael quite a bit too. And he's actually the one that led me in that direction to work with this angel. And he told me to, just lay it out there. Pray, ask for direct signs. And I did that. So, I asked the universe, give me a sign this weekend. I want it plain as day. I want to see the number 44 in something, and I want to see it 3 times. I want to see it by Sunday. If you are the entity I'm really working with, this is what I want to see. So that weekend, I saw at least 5 or 6 license plates with the number 44 in the front of it. The last one, I was like, okay, that could be so coincidental, right? You could see 44 on any license plate. So I was like, yeah, you got to do better than that, right? The next car had all 4s. All 4s.
What?
On my phone, there was people who were messaging me on my phone. Every single one of them was like 44 minutes. You know how it tells you the time on your phone? One of my friends whose name is Michael, interestingly enough, he texted me at exactly 4:44 that weekend. Oh, the biggest thing, I found a penny. It was one of those wheat pennies, the old school pennies. And it was from 1944. That was like the biggest sign. Because how coincidental is that? And then I got a
I love that.
sales receipt from the grocery that was $4.44. So, there was just no denying that this was the evidence I needed. It was in my face all weekend, and it was just there.
I love it because you're like, I need to see it at least 3 times. And it's like, you want some signs? I'm going to show you. Let's make sure you're paying attention. That's
Yeah.
great.
So it was just odd stuff like that. And then I asked one other time, and I asked, if you do research into Archangel Michael, he often shows up, like a lot of people ask him for feathers. So a lot of people believe, he'll leave you a white feather if he's really there. I was on my way back to Nashville from Key West. And if you ever driven through there, there's you go right through, the Everglades. And there's a road that goes across there, and I think it's called Alligator Alley, if I'm not mistaken. So I was going through there because Hurricane Dorian had just come through that coast there, and there was no gas going up the east side through Florida. So I went the west side. I had to cross all the way through. And I just randomly stopped at one of the gas stations. And again, I was, praying that the Archangel Michael would help me with a situation I was going through. I asked for a sign and ended up finding an eagle's feather. Went into one of the bathrooms and came out, and there was this giant eagle feather right there in the middle of the sidewalk. And I still have it somewhere around here. Hold on, I'll show it to you.
I love that. That's so cool.
So yeah.
So you definitely got your sign.
Yeah. So stuff like that I'm really confident if you ask any spirit, your spirit guide, whoever it is you want to work with, and they'll answer you. It's kind of one of those things. If you seek, you're going to find it.
I feel like the past, month, I feel like I've been having almost like an existential crisis of faith here where it's like, do I believe this stuff? Is this real? Is this? And then I'm like, it's real. What is wrong with you? And I think it's because I feel, for some reason, I feel very muted down currently. Like I don't feel connected to that world like I normally do. So it's causing me to feel like, oh, it's not real because I don't feel it. And so that's a flawed way of thinking, but that's where I'm currently at.
It could just mean that you need some grounding. So maybe you just spend some time in meditation and kind of do self grounding and spirit.
I need to, because it's definitely like, why am I feeling this way? And I try to pause and take notice of what I'm feeling and why I'm feeling that way. And so I think it might be too. I'm just so overwhelmed in the regular world, the 3D world, that it's like I have no stock for the rest. But that's just a sidetrack. John, do you have anything?
Not at the present moment, no.
I'm sorry, I had something and then my brain
I know.
just
I
went,
could tell you were going somewhere with that, but it slipped.
Sorry to mean to
So-
take the conversation way southfield.
No, it was actually part of
Not
it.
at
Was
all.
it was part of
Yeah.
it. I'm the one that went all weird. So interestingly enough, I have actually talked about a bit about the experiences up at Bethany's and what I encountered. And for any listeners that remember what I've said, I had mentioned being in the hallway a while. There were a few people in the bedroom talking about the space, and hearing a woman's laughter echo up the stairwell really loudly. And CL here is the one that I was referencing when I said, they were like, "Did you hear that?" And I was like, "No, you heard it too." CL's the one that verified what I heard, because I was like, "I'm not going to say anything. I heard nothing." And then CL was like, "Did anyone else hear that?" Oh, yes, I did.
I'm sure your face gave it away first, didn't it?
Because I was kind of lurking a little in the hallway while they were doing their thing and talking. And I was like a little shadow, just following everybody room to room, just taking it all in, because I don't have a lot of experience with this stuff. And CL, I mean, you were picking up so much there. Like the stuff you were talking about, the history that you felt, that Elsie later was like, "Yep, that's true." It's like, oh my gosh. It's watching magic happen in real time.
Yeah. Sometimes I forget what I pick up, and like what I forget looking back, because you see it in flashes and then I forget what I actually saw. But I do remember seeing like bottles, a bunch of bottles in a basement, and like bags of potatoes or something. It was the weirdest thing. And I think Elsie came back and said that it may have been a bootlegging thing going on in the basement.
Yeah, she had referenced like it used to be like a little bit of a speakeasy, and then that she was researching about potential bootlegging, and so it was crazy that you had picked up on that. That was awesome. I remember you both went out to the creek area, and I had felt so much coming from that back area that I was like, I'm just gonna stay in the house, because that fear, right? The fear of, I don't know what I'm about to feel or experience. So I'm just gonna stay in here. So I was curious, what did you feel when you were back there? Because I didn't go back to the creek area.
Around the creek,
Do you remember?
not a whole lot, to be honest. Not around the creek. Now, I know there's like stories of a man who drowned back there or something, but I didn't really feel anything at the time that I was back there. But, the town of Jackson, that whole town, the entire time I was there, I kept seeing like miners with really dark faces, like almost as if they were blackened with coal or something. And I didn't know this at the time, but I kept seeing them in groups all over the place. And it turned out that there was a fire in one of the mines up there that killed a bunch of people. So I guess that's what I was seeing. But the whole town kind of has that feeling to it. I'm just walking through it.
I stopped by the Serbian cemetery for the miners, or I should say it's a cemetery that has the miners there that were in the accident. And it just, the energy there is just, to me, it didn't, some places carry an energy of sadness or grief. To me, it just felt clean and strong, if that makes sense. Just like really clean and strong energy. So, and I don't know if that's just because a lot of people are drawn there day in, day out, so it funnels a lot of different energies, but it was a really beautiful space. I went there before I went over to the Airbnb. And when I was in the Airbnb, that hallway in the back, that addition with the bathroom and the laundry, that felt really different to me. And I felt like whatever was on the other side of that wall behind it, it was just like, it just, that area of the house was very much to me like something really strong happened in this space. And that's where she said, I guess, that she was afraid to go to that hallway at night, even though it
Yeah.
was a new addition. And I'm like, I don't know what happened back here, but it did not. And I think that's why I was afraid to go to the creek, because I'm like, it's all going further back, at what point does it just feel too much? So,
I know the apartment that's downstairs, that has a lot of activity. So I went down there for just a little bit and talked to the person who's renting the space down there.
oh, you
That
actually
has,
talked to them.
yeah.
What, what did they say
Yeah.
about the space?
She said she was comfortable in there, but that it's an every night thing where they're hearing voices and seeing little lights, and I think her camera actually picked something up, like a little green light moving through. I think it's like a living room or sitting area or something down there, and it's like a little pin, almost like somebody has a like a laser. And they're like lasering it, but it had a tail on it. And you could see the whole room, so you know that somebody's not in there with a laser or anything like that. But just interesting.
Yeah, her camera in the basement tends to pick up a lot. And I've always been curious if she shifted angles, what she would capture. Because I know the area, the little hallway that they say is the vortex underneath the house, if she shifted that to point in there at night to see what she could capture at some point. Because I think that there's a lot of activity going on in there that is being potentially missed. When I was downstairs with her in the basement, I think it was before you had gotten there, it was just Elsie and myself, and we were walking around that basement area, the unfinished area, and I heard something shuffle literally right next to me. Like someone was standing next to me and shuffled their feet a little. I jumped so hard that it startled her. And she's like, "What's wrong?" And I'm just looking sideways. I'm like, "Nothing. Nothing at all." But it literally felt like someone was standing right next to me and had just shifted their feet. And I was like, I don't know what just happened, but keep moving. On we go.
Her house is very interesting for sure. One thing that was striking about it is the minute I walked into the house, I could feel it all around me. It was like an intense pressure. But then within 10 minutes, it dissipated. It's like the spirit was running from me. It was kind of weird. It was like, okay, you don't have to run.
She's like, "It's fine."
So I don't know. It's almost as if that spirit was afraid or something.
Yeah, I did. Though I think the part that left me unsettled was when I was in the basement with you guys. You were all talking, and I got really, I guess, nauseous, and like it almost felt like my head got super clouded all of a sudden. And it was just like, I think I need to go upstairs, because it was the longer I was standing there, the worse it was getting, which I've never experienced that sensation. Like I felt so clouded, almost like I had been drugged. And so I went up to the living room and sat on the couch. And from there, I just watched the lights go on and off upstairs. Nobody was upstairs. The lights were just going on and off, the motion detector lights. And I'm like, okay.
I think I remember that. I think you guys were all talking about that when I went back upstairs.
Yeah, because she had kicked her friends out so that we could go around the house. And so they were all outside. And I had gone upstairs because I was feeling really woozy. And Elsie said, if that happens, not to leave the house like quickly, just unless it gets too bad. And then I guess she said, go to the middle of the street, but just like take it easy. So I'm sitting on the couch and I'm watching the lights just go on and off. And I'm like, this is such an interesting home.
Very. Well, it's the whole area, though. I remember I went out on the porch just for a break, and there was a neighbor directly across in the house, directly across, that was outside doing tarot cards facing the house. So I thought, what's going on over here? Does that have anything to do with what's going on here? It was very strange. And I even tried to get her attention.
She referenced the witch next door, too. It seems
Did
like it's a
she?
very hopping area. So
Yeah, I tried to get her attention to talk to her for a minute, but she ran in the house as soon as I tried to talk to her. But yeah, she was out there with tarot cards, literally facing the house. So you have to wonder, is there something going on there?
Yeah, Elsie said it was the entire street kind of has that kind of energy vibration. So to your point, it kind of makes me wonder how many of those homes are actually
Haunted.
carrying a lot of spirits. Yeah.
So when I stayed in Jackson, I stayed at the Jackson Hotel, and that place is very haunted.
That's
Very
what she
haunted.
told us. Because I joked, I'm not going to stay there. I'll stay at the hotel. And she said, the only hotel we have is even more haunted. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Out of all of the places that you've gone on these paranormal investigations, have there been any that have just like stayed with you that in a way that just is pretty memorable, whether positive or negative?
Gosh, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. So there's a couple places that I visit quite often, and I've gotten to know some of the spirits in these places. And, they're just human spirits that don't want to move on for whatever reason. There's one in Tonopah that I've gotten to know, and I kind of know her story. I'm going to write a book about her life. She's buried under the incorrect name, first of all. So I'm trying to get the Historical Society to actually change the tombstone or actually put her real name on that tombstone. And it was because she was a runaway from Texas, and she ended up dying of suicide. And the story is she was a prostitute for a very short time, maybe not even a month before she committed suicide. The reason she ended up there was because she hopped on a train because her dad had an arranged marriage for her. He was a prominent oil industry guy, and because she wasn't marrying this guy, and because she ran away and she ended up being a prostitute to support herself, the family pretty much disowned her and didn't want their name on the tombstone. Yeah, there's a fake name that she's under, and I don't know, I just feel led to tell her story and work with the Historical Society, I hope, to get something changed on her tombstone. But that's one of them.
I love that you were using that communication that you're able to establish with her to kind of right a wrong. That's really amazing. Oftentimes people are out there investigating, and this isn't a judgment thing, but they're investigating just to see if there is something there. I think it's amazing that you're actually taking it a step further and you're trying to help make changes and advocate, for these spirits. That's really cool.
For me, I know it exists, so I'm not out to prove either way, right? So I go in, my main purpose is to try to communicate with the spirit if there is a spirit there. And if they want to cross on, I try to wake them up, in a sense, just, to let them know that they can cross on. They don't have to stay here. There's a choice. You can either stay here or not. I try to do that. If it's something outstanding, like in this case of that lady, I do some research to try to figure out what is going on here. Why is she standing here? I saw her all the way across the cemetery. And the reason why I went was because I was looking for another grave that was on the hillside, way on the other side of this cemetery. And I just happened to glance, and I saw her just real quick, all the way on the other side of the cemetery. And I thought, crap, I'm going to have to go there. The other place I would have to say is Virginia City. For some reason, I'm just so drawn to this place. I feel like I've been there before in some other lifetime. I don't know what it is. I'm actually going there in 3 weeks just to spend a weekend. But yeah, it just has that hold on me for some reason.
What do you do when you're there? Are you going to the same places, or do you find different, or are you just intuitive, you're letting your intuition guide you when you're there?
I kind of let my intuition guide me when I'm there. I actually don't investigate. I did once with Shane Pittman and that gang. We went to the Wasso Club, and that was the first time I've ever actually been there. But I just go there to relax now and go to the coffee house, do some writing, that kind of stuff. Do pictures if I want to.
You just feel really connected
Yeah.
there. Yeah, your pictures are amazing, by the way. I
Thank you.
think I've commented on a few of yours. I'm like, this is such a beautiful shot. You're very thoughtful about what you put out there, and to me, it comes through. It comes through with your photos, but also on your website. Because you do have the Small Town Tales podcast, you put your episodes up there, and each episode has its own page, and you're very thoughtful about the description and your guests. And I'm just like, wow, I could learn a lot from you.
Thank you. It means a lot.
Now, how long have you had Small Town Tales?
So this is the third season already. It's pretty amazing. It's weird when you have a podcast because at first I was very, very shy and I was pretty terrible at it, to be honest. I'm still terrible at it. I'm getting better though. But I was very shy and I don't know. I've kind of watched myself kind of grow a little bit, throughout the last 2 years with it. So it's kind of neat, I guess.
I think it's great. And I advocate people who start something and create something to not be afraid to give yourself kudos.
Yeah.
Because especially with podcasting, it is hard. And I think any podcaster out there can say, yep, we were terrible when we first started because none of us know what we're doing. Like, we have an idea, right? This is what I want to talk about. Sometimes it's like, I think this is what I want to talk about. And then it goes a completely different way.
Right.
Like we started that we're going to talk about horror, and now look at us, we have metaphysical, we have like extraterrestrial, like it's grown into its own thing. And so you have an idea of where you're starting, but it's still anybody that's introverted. Like, I think most podcasters are actually introverted individuals. We get out there and it's just like, oh,
It's so true.
like, heavy pause. And then you get comfortable and you start to just find your pace and your way. But I know John and I, we try to give ourselves, woohoo, we're doing it. Woohoo, that was great. We're doing awesome things. And I think we live in a world that doesn't always teach people that, right? Like,
Yeah.
celebrate your wins.
It's true.
And so, so for me, I'm like, anybody out there, if you've got a project or you're involved in something, celebrate your wins. Like, nothing wrong with that.
Especially in paranormal right now, because there's a lot. I mean, everybody has a podcast now, and it's just hard to get your stuff out. And there's a lot of good ones out there. There's a lot of competition, and I shouldn't say competition, but there's a lot of really great stuff, and that's who you're up against. Who are people going to listen to?
Everybody.
Yeah.
That's the one benefit of binge culture. They binge one podcast and they're like, what do I listen to now? And it's like, I have one. You can binge me next.
It's just hard. Everybody's got a TV show and everyone's got a podcast, and it's just hard to distinguish yourself from everybody else, I guess, in paranormal.
So for you, when you're when you're interacting in different paranormal situations, you said that you sometimes determine if you are, needing to help them cross over. How did you even learn to guide spirits into like crossing over? Because we hear that a lot. You hear it casually said on TV, and it's like, yeah, I helped them cross over. I helped them, and it's like, but how'd you know how to do that?
So I don't actually cross them over per se. I just what I do is I'll go in, if I get if I connect with a spirit, because here's the thing. I think a lot of times where if you're depressed, what happens? You kind of withdraw into yourself. And in some cases, that person kind of gets stuck in life where they're not able to move forward with projects in life in general, work, whatever it is, relationships. I feel like it's the same when you die. If you die and you were severely depressed or you're just stuck mentally, chances are you're still going to be stuck like that in the afterlife, hanging out. When you look at like prisons and churches are another one. Some churches are the most haunted places I've ever been to. Asylums are always usually really haunted. Anything that's high drama like that. I feel like that person's kind of just asleep. They're stuck in their depression and whatever crap it is that they've dealt with in life. So what I like to do is go in and try to communicate with that spirit and kind of wake them up from that. Just call to attention that, hey, you don't have to stay here. You can move on. You can go join your family. And then what I do is I'll do a prayer for the dead, and that's something I learned from another medium who does this in his work. And what you do is you meditate, you envision an open door, and you do prayers for the dead, basically. And I'll call on Archangel Michael to try to intervene. I don't always know if it works or not, but I can tell you this. There's been a couple locations where I've done this, And then I'll go back to that location and try to connect with that spirit, and they're no longer there. Is it because I tried to move them on? I don't know, So it's a little bit of validation, though, for me. There was one time where I was doing this, and I caught an EVP, and a woman's voice said thank you to me. So that was another validation that something's happening. I can't tell you if it's like me actually moving them on. I think maybe I just wake them up, and that's it.
That's really, I love how you explain it. You explain things in a way that makes sense to my brain. Because I think we take things as just fact, right? Like watching TV or listening to shows where people say things exactly like, I help them move on, or we are coming in to clear the spirits. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. And then you stop and think about it, and it's like, wait, what does that mean? How do you do that? So, and John knows I'm a very inquisitive person, so I'm just like, how? What is that?
Well, that's the other thing. I don't know if it's a heaven that they're going to. I don't know. I just know that they don't need to be here. They can go somewhere else.
When we were at the Airbnb, you had referenced a potential past life for Elsie, and I was curious, is that something that you're able to do? Like, are you able to recognize past lives for individuals?
Not always. Just every once in a blue moon that'll come up. I think I can only remember the conversation that we had, but she had said something that led me to believe that she may have, with some comments or something that she made that kind of alluded to it.
She had said she was drawn to buying the home just from photographs. She felt drawn, like she was meant to own this home. And I think shortly after you had mentioned her potentially having a past life connected to that home. So I was curious about that.
Well, for Elsie, too, there's another part of that where she's just so connected and in tuned with the spirits there. She knows them by name. They seem to know her. She says they're interacting with her. It's almost as if she's known these people. Like when she talks about them, it's almost as if she's known them before, right?
Yeah, she does seem very familiar with a few of them. More so than like these people have told me this is their names. Like it does feel very familiar to her.
Mm-hmm. Like she knows their personality. She knows what they did in life. She knows their past history. And there's a whole lot to it that kind of leads me to believe that maybe she's been around the block with that before. I don't know. It's always it's plausible.
So because you are so sensitive and intuitive, do you ever find yourself, or did you find yourself overwhelmed with the amount of activity out there?
Yes, all the time. All the time. Actually, it happened just this past weekend. So I'm doing some training with a guy named Joseph Stahl. He's a famous medium who does evidential mediumship. And I'll tell you another story right after I tell you this. He had me read just a random stranger this past weekend, and I did. And this lady comes on a Zoom call, and I'm looking at her, and I start to do her reading, and all of a sudden, two people come in. And it was her mother and it was her brother. And both of these spirits, the minute they came in, I told her, I see your mom and I see a younger man who I assume is either your brother or somebody that's close to you. And, right away she gets angry. She doesn't want to talk to the brother at all. And the mom told me, clear as day, she needs to hear this. Let him come forth. And so he gave me a couple messages for her. She started to cry. But during that whole reading, the whole time, it's like I was in the middle of... You ever walk in a room where people are arguing? It was that. Like, I was right in the middle of, like, all of this chaos that was going on. And all I heard the whole time was, like, screaming and yelling all around me while I was doing this reading. And finally, I just stopped and I said, I hear, like, a lot of yelling and screaming as if they were fighting over property. But I didn't really get into the details with her on the whole thing, but it was a very overwhelming reading. Like, I actually walked out of there going, what did I just step into? It was like just such a traumatic thing. And at the end, she says, this is such a healing experience for me. I'm able to move on from what's happened. And she explained a little bit of what went on. I think the mom passed from dementia. The brother got the land, and then there's a fiance that he was going to marry right before he died, and she was fighting for the property that should have went to the sister. It was like this big thing. So there was like a lot of anger towards the brother that she needed to forgive from the whole. And she also felt like he wasn't in the picture when the mom was dying, because she was like the caretaker and all that kind of stuff. But it was very traumatic.
So when you say they came in, did you visually see them, or was it more like you said, walking into the room and you could hear them?
It was both.
Okay.
It was both. The other one is there was a case in Tennessee, probably about 4 years ago now, where a little boy went missing. And it was the case where I said I would never do this again, actually. This little boy went missing. I was asked to try to find where he was or what happened to him. So I drove to the house, sat down, meditated, try to see what happened. And his father actually beat this kid to death, stuffed him in the back of his car, and dumped him into the river. There was like a river that was really, really flooded at the time. This was in, I think, January. But the guy the whole time was lying about it. He said he didn't do it. He said the kid just ran off somewhere, or somebody had stolen him. And it wasn't until this past summer that somebody from Tennessee contacted me that was working on that case. They told me the father actually admitted to beating the kid to death, putting him in the car, and dumping him in the river where I saw him. So that one, I carried that around for like 2 years, that whole case.
That's hard. Like,
Yeah.
I have a super soft spot for children, obviously. And so, like, for you to channel that in, like, you experienced that's, oh man. How do you process that and reconcile that within yourself when you are experiencing these kind of things?
That one, I cried a lot. I no longer want to do any kind of evidential mediumship ever again. Any kind of case that's involving somebody that got killed or anything like that. So
I don't blame you. That's a lot.
yeah.
I'm too sensitive for that. I feel like I would be bawling in a corner eating pints of chocolate ice cream or something. Like that just, oh man. Like even just you describing it, I was like, oh, my heart.
It was a really messed up case.
Now, and that brings up an interesting topic, for all that people say this is woo-woo and not real, you were approached for an investigation. That's, a lot of this, people don't realize that psychics are approached quite a bit. Mediums are approached quite a bit when all other avenues have been exhausted. And there have been a lot of cases where they get it right, but it doesn't get talked about. And I don't understand why. Like, if they're getting it right and it's helping, why would we not validate? Guys, this is real. This is a thing.
I think our society is just not ready yet to hear that kind of thing. We're so stuck on facts and stuff we can see, the tangible kind of stuff. Especially if you're in law enforcement. I just had a guy on the podcast a couple months ago who talked about that topic. He works with a lot of investigators and sheriffs and, first responders. And they have a lot of paranormal experiences, but they will never talk about it. It's just one of those things. And it's because of, their jobs are keeping them from that. There's a physician that I know who's very much into the paranormal and who has a lot of experiences in the ER, but he'll never come out and talk about that either.
And isn't it interesting that, like, just by believing it, acknowledging that you believe in it or have experienced it, it somehow takes away credibility. We've talked about that with a lady who's like, she's a real estate agent. And she said the same thing. Like, if I talk about this aspect of myself, I'm no longer a credible real estate agent.
That's right.
And it's like, that's insane. It's sad that we still operate that way. But, we are seeing a shift. And I'm sure you've noticed a shift towards people believing more, being open to more, and understanding there is more. That thinning of the veil, right? So hopefully that dynamic doesn't stay around too long.
Well, there's a lot of medical physicians now who are part of a group, and I think they're based in Chicago, where they're studying afterlife experiences and things like that, and they're making a lot of headway. There's a lot of, I don't know about how much of medical world that you guys know, but there's like the medical journal where the AMA, everyone's a part of the AMA. They have a journal out where residents. Those are physicians that finish med school that are just getting into the field and working in the field as students. They write abstracts, which are research papers, kind of like a dissertation, I guess, for master's degrees. Well, this program is a lot of that, where they're doing research on afterlife phenomena and EVPs and just all kinds of different things. It's really neat to see that come out more and more.
I think it's cool that we're seeing the fields start to be more open to that studying, because I've firmly believed that if we spent more efforts, whether it be government or medical or science, like all those things, if we spent more efforts researching that, we'd probably know a lot more by now.
Right.
But because they're like, oh no, that's left to the woo-woo people, like we can only do so much. So for you, you're on the journey to mediumship, it sounds like. Are there any other metaphysical type gifts that you have been pursuing?
No, not really.
No. I mean, mediumship is a big one. The fact that you can see, because it sounds like the people we've talked to, they usually just like feel it, right? They get a feeling or a sensation sometimes here, and you're like, I see them. That's, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I see them. Sometimes I hear them. It just depends.
I don't know how you deal with that, CL, because it's no mystery on this podcast. Like I've always said, I do not want the gift of sight because I think that would scare me way more. And the fact that you just roll with it and you embrace it and you're not afraid of it, I love that. That is so inspiring. Maybe I'll be brave like you. But I like what you said, that to kind of put that spin on it, it resonated with me that you've felt what the bad feels like. So you know what it is. You don't need to be afraid of the rest because you've felt the worst, basically. So
yeah, you learn how to deal with it. When you first go into it, you really don't know how to deal with that spirit or how to pull you out of a certain mindset or that kind of stuff. And you just learn over time what to do.
So I'm going to veer hard left, I guess, but you do have another book that's out. I know I talked about your pending book, but you do have another book. Did you want to tell us about that and where people can find it?
Yeah, Speaking to Shadows is actually, it's a historical fiction, and it's based on several legends around the bayous around New Orleans. And what I did was I combined several legends into one for a specific property. It's about mysterious murders that happen around this town, in hauntings and historical stuff like tragedies that led up to this. I'm not really explaining this very well. I do apologize.
I think you're doing great.
So I tie in the local culture, which is voodoo, and some of the bayou culture, which would be like the sugarcane and the Cajun historical aspects into this story. And the property is actually Oaks Alley, and it's about 40 minutes outside of New Orleans. And you can find this book. It's a short read. You can find it on Amazon. I think it's $6.66 right now on there. I did that on purpose.
That's funny. So with the Small Town Tales podcast, for those that want to listen to it, where can they find it?
They could find it everywhere. It's listed on all podcast platforms, and it's on my website. If you can't find it, it's on the website. You can just click on it and it'll play. But yeah, it's on Apple, it's on iHeart, it's on just about everywhere a podcast can be.
Yeah, go find Small Town Tales podcast and hit that follow button and like, love it.
Thank you guys.
It is a really great podcast, and I would highly recommend people going and giving it a listen, especially if you are into the metaphysical and the paranormal, because you approach it in a way that still roots into medical, still roots into psychological, still roots into all of the hard, if you will, sciences and some of the soft sciences out there that help people relate to it a bit more. They understand it a bit more, which I think is really helpful.
Thank you for saying that. The latest episode is probably one of my favorites so far because I talked to Mike DeCaro, and I forget what radio station he's on. He's a radio guy. But he came up with this experiment based off of the Gansfield experiment, which was started like in the 70s, I believe. And it's where they would do like the whole sensory deprivation thing. And they were trying to communicate with spirit using sensory deprivation. And there's like a whole line of experiments going all the way back into the 30s doing this. But he took it a step farther and made these goggles with red flashing lights. So you don't want to try this if if you have seizures or anything like that. But it's kind of like the Estes method where you're completely sensory deprived, but you're looking into a red flashing light, which makes it even more. And I just want to try this so bad. In fact, I wanted to go to Bethany's house and do an entire film about spirit communication using different experiments like this. So hopefully I'll get to do that soon.
That would be awesome. And maybe I can go follow and shadow you again.
Absolutely.
I.e. stalk you around the house.
Absolutely.
Do you use any tools to help you protect yourself, ground yourself, or is it purely through meditation and prayer?
Yes, purely meditation and prayer.
That's awesome.
I know a lot of people use crystals and crosses, and you know what? It's whatever works for you. You got the Wiccans, and their method works, and then you have Catholics and crosses, and that works for them, and you got the Native Americans that have their entire spiritual beliefs. So it's based off of what works for you.
Yeah, I love that. I completely, wholeheartedly agree. It's what you have faith in, what you believe in, because that's where your energy is going to be truly connected to. So I love that.
If you do go back to Bethany's, though, that would be great to do a film like that and try that method. I was kind of around when the Estes method was being born, so I got to see that whole thing start out, which was really cool. And then I tried it out myself in Jerome, Arizona. So it's interesting to do it.
Is the Estes method the one where they have the static playing through the
Yes.
headphones and the blindfold on?
Where we have the spirit box, and you have the headphones plugged in, and you're either blindfolded or facing the other way, eyes closed, so you can't see or hear the questions being asked. That's the one that we had Lila do when we were talking about that way back and whatever. You're like, how do you have a little kid do that? And I'm like, she wasn't that little. So
And you had her facing the wall. I'm like, why would you do that?
we all face the wall.
So they don't get any cues from people looking at them.
Yeah.
So when I was in,
Yeah.
just real quick, when I was in Virginia City with Shane Pittman, we took it a step further. So there's 2 locations there. We had a group at, and I forget the name of the group. It's like an old time fraternity club, and I forget the name. I can't believe it. It doesn't matter. It's a fraternity from like turn of the century, and a lot of those guys were also members of the Wasso Club, which was the $1 Million Club at the time. So you had all these gentlemen that were well-to-do and had a lot of money from the mines, and they owned everything, that kind of thing. So they were members of both locations. So we had a couple people up at the other location who called. We were trying to connect the two, and we had someone doing the Estes method at one of the locations while the other guy was asking questions from the other location. Hey, this is such and such from, I don't know, we'll just call it the Straits Club for now. And we were trying to communicate to spirits between both buildings to see if we could get them to connect. It was really interesting.
Did it work?
We got some strange phenomenal going on. We did.
Interesting.
I like that. That's an awesome idea. I would love to try that.
But Bethany ought to do that with the Jackson Hotel because it's so close, and it's almost certain somebody knew
Right.
somebody there.
Ooh,
Oh, that'd be
there you
cool.
go.
Set up at the 2 locations.
Yeah.
Right? Aha. I have an idea for when I come to visit. No, I'm just joking.
Now, since you both have been on quite a few paranormal investigations and you're familiar with the equipment, I've been seeing all over social media lately the dowsing rods. Can someone explain to me why they shake them?
That I couldn't tell you, but I do have some dowsing rods.
I have some too. Yeah.
Because, like, they'll do, like, the yes or no questions, and then, like, if it's not going the way they, I don't know, anticipate or it's not moving, they'll shake it. Is that, like, to reset it? Or what is
I would
that?
think, but I've never done that. I'm just like, I'll hold it straight and wait until they straighten out for themselves.
Yeah.
And then I'll be like, all right, then I'm going to ask. But I've never shaken. I've never even seen anybody do that. That's weird.
Yeah, I've never seen that either.
Do you test your equipment at home, or do you only use stuff like away from your home?
So lately I have been testing stuff in my house. I try not to because I like a clean space at home. So I refuse to do like EVPs or any of that kind of stuff. But if it's like dowsing rods or things like that, I do just try just to see what comes out of them.
Yeah, it's I feel like the skeptic in me starts to like, if people are doing dowsing rods on social media, I'm like watching their hands. Because it's like I'm looking for the muscle twitches. But then part of me wonders if it's moving, is that twitch just them trying to keep hold of it as it moves? So I try not to be too judgy.
Yeah, it's kind of like the dowsing, the little pendulums too that people use. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I really appreciate you coming on tonight, CL. Like, you've been really amazing. I hope, if you're open to it, that you'll come join us again so we can
Absolutely.
talk more about all the things.
Absolutely. I would love to. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And if people want to find out more about you, where can they go?
Oh, it's real easy. clthomas.org.
You've made it very easy. That's awesome. And everything you want to know about CL is on there. Books, the different social media pages, the podcast, like CL mentioned, the podcast links, direct podcast episodes. So all things CL. It's amazing.
Thank you.
All right, John Thomas.
All right. Thank you again, CL, for coming on. This has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of 3Haunted Podcast with your host. I'm John Thomas.
I am Ashley, Lunar Goddess.
And if you have any questions, comments, or episode suggestions, please feel free to email us at 3hauntedpodcast@gmail.com. And like I ask every episode, if you haven't done so already, please like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media. You don't want to miss one crazy moment.
Until next time. Are you looking for more awesome podcasts? Head on over to withoutyourhead.com for access to the Without Your Head podcast network, where you'll find a variety of podcasts sure to keep you entertained and coming back for more.